sets you free. Trento Vision is hosted by Tom Trento. Tom can be reached at 561-319-5533 or Tom at TrentoVision.tv. Listen and watch every weekday from 3 to 6 p.m. on AM 1470 WNN and TrentoVision.tv. Now, let's get a peek at Tom's view of the world. Here's Tom Trento.
Yeah, we're back on the third and final hour. 5:07, 7 minutes after 5 o'clock in beautiful Boca Raton. Welcome if you're just tuning in to Trento Vision, and if you're driving in your car, it's 72 degrees, and it looks like it's going to get dark.
Yeah.
I'm the weatherman. It's 72 degrees, and it's going to get dark. That's all you need to know. Put your lights on when it gets dark. You should have your lights on all the time. You guys know that? You should always be driving.
I always have my lights on.
Always
and
put
I
them
don't
on.
want to hear any jokes about it.
No, I mean, everybody should do that. You're wasting all kinds of energy. You're warming the climate and all of that. But
But that's okay because we're not Democrats right now.
that's right.
So.
We're back to being plutocrats.
ourselves.
So
yeah.
can I clarify my statement?
There's no need to, but yes, you
Yes,
can. Well, let me explain to the new tuners in.
Tuners in.
Yeah, on 1470 WNN and on TrentoVision.tv. We used to be on the 2 to 3 hour, but I think you know now we're 3 to 6. We're going to be with you for quite a while, for forever. We are looking for those of you who would like to advertise on our show. You can do that by contacting us at tom@TrentoVision.tv. You can send us a little note, tom@TrentoVision.tv, and we'll tell you all about the advertising. And we'll put spots together for you, and you can help support the show. We'll help support your company, and it'll be a beautiful world. That's the Republican capitalistic way of doing things. Today, we've entitled our three-part play, The First Activist Friday After the Failure on Fatal Tuesday, okay? Because every Friday up to the election, we had Activist Friday. We had activists weigh in, and the excitement was amazing. I want to talk somewhere in here about the disparity of 5.5 million Republican votes. We'll get into that later. But we have been focusing up to the election on analyzing the president and his administration on national security issues, evidencing the failures, and then arguing for a change in administration. That did not happen. So guess what? We are even more needed behind these controls here, these 3 hours every day to help wade through the bizarre and difficult and complex world and dangerous world we live in. So starting next week, we'll get back on track with our national security information, both on a global scale and on a local and national scale. We'll tell you everything that's going on, everything you need to know about national security. We will have on phenomenal experts in the area. And it's going to be you're gonna get your master's degree in security procedures and security issues by listening to this show, particularly as things heat up in the Maghreb in the Middle East. The Arab Spring turns into a complete nightmare. Israel comes under more attack. They're being hit by missiles every day right now. Serious firing. Missiles at them, and the Israelis said yesterday, "You better stop this. You're telling us it's a mistake, but we ain't buying it." Okay, so we'll help you sift through all of that and make sense. Today, though, we took a look at the particular problem with Allen West in District 18 and the possibility of a recount that he's calling for. Then in our second hour, we had a little surprise. I surprised our guys here, Mark and CJ, and asked them to play the role of a Democrat so that we can have an intelligent conversation about their belief system and why they worship Barack Obama. But they don't worship him. It's just the John Kennedy kind of thing.
That's right.
And in that, we got into the subject of socialism, which is lately a critique and criticism being laid on the Democratic Party in terms of moving toward a socialist European philosophy, economy, and complete system. And in that, we had a couple of callers, one of whom was in the U.S. Army, Lieutenant Colonel, lifelong Democrat. But he, interestingly enough, he was role-playing the role as a Republican, asking you and me what we're doing. And in that, Mark and Robert got in a little exchange, not heated or anything, just a regular little conversation. If you want to see heated exchanges, hang around with us when we're out of here. But we'll bring some of that here. Mark got in a little exchange and was challenged on his thesis that the United States military is a de facto socialist entity. Now, you wanted to straighten that out, Mark.
Yeah, and the best argument for that ideology, because it's a Star Trek mentality, is what it is that the wealth is redistributed just like it is in a socialist system, and you don't have to, your health care is taken care of and all that other good stuff. The big core difference between a socialist system and the U.S. military is very simply stated to the oath of which all military people apply, and that they and their allegiance, and here's the key point, their allegiance is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That is the key difference, because you are swearing your oath not to the military. You're not swearing your allegiance to your commanders. You're not swearing your allegiance to that entity. You're swearing your allegiance to an entity outside of your organization that you are sworn and to give your life to defend and protect. The military is but a component of the Republic of the United States, whereas in other systems of government, where they become a total militaristic state, that their allegiance is to that government or that organization or the leaders of that organization. That is the key difference. And also the camaraderie of the people is the reason most people, fight in military. They'll fight for their buddy next to them. That's where it really boils down to. That's what makes the American military the best military in the world, because we have the higher ideal of fighting for something that is not part of the organization that we're part of. Does that make sense?
Well, it's also the largest volunteer army in the history. It's volunteer army.
To sacrifice our rights.
The people who are in the military are not drafted into the military. It's not the law of the land that when you turn 18 or 20 that you have to join the military.
But you're sacrificing your rights as the freedom part of the society to join the militaristic part of the society, which has to be that way in order to have a successful fighting unit.
Well,
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a little.
It's a little squishy sounding.
It was a little squishy sounding.
Yeah.
No, but you do sacrifice some of your freedoms and rights from being a U.S. citizen when you do go into the military.
I think the problem goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If you'd like to get in on the conversation, folks, we are at 888-565-1470. Told you it's very easy. 888 is the free stuff. 565, the only numbers you got to remember. 1470 is the call numbers for the radio all over on the right-hand side. We're discussing right now a couple of political philosophies. And this show is designed to bring you into our little living room here and to hear us kind of struggle with these things and the callers struggle with it, and then make some sense, make some applications so we learn something. What we do is somewhat entertaining for sure, but it's food for your brain to stimulate your thinking. Part of the problem, and it was illustrated in our little experiment in the second hour, it's problem of definitions.
Right.
Unless there's agreement in a debate or discussion on a definition, and it's very hard to do when you're standing in line and somebody says, yeah, you freaking Democrats are all socialists, you're Marxists. No, we're not. Yes, you are. No, we're not. What do those terms even mean, right? But in a more protracted analytical environment, you have to agree to the terms that you're debating. Otherwise, there's just no end to it.
To highlight your point, and we had this discussion the other night, is someone says you're a fundamentalist Christian, and he says, well, he's a fundamentalist Muslim. Well, the key term fundamentalist seems like it crosses both, because both are religion, both of this, but those are two completely, entirely different definitions
for those disciplines. Sure,
for those disciplines. Like you said, like socialist, like fundamentalist. What does a fundamentalist mean? You know, and what does a fundamentalist Christian mean versus what does a fundamentalist Muslim mean? Because they're two different things entirely.
Well, let's play with socialism for a minute,
Okay.
And then then I think the easier way to struggle with these issues is to look at the particular principles of each party, the
Right.
Democrat Party, the Republican Party, because they are a party, a political party. For some reason, they believe in something
because
different.
they have been for a long time.
Well, yeah, but there's got to be some fundamental beliefs upon which they base their position. So I'd like to take a look at that too. But you're scribbling stuff.
Yes.
What are you scribbling?
Caller.
Okay. So that's what we'll do. We'll play around with the concept of socialism, and socialism could be a political theory or a philosophical theory. It could be a political theory. It could be an economic system. So we kind of got to encapsulate it somehow. But before we do that, we'll see what's on the mind of Ron. Hi, Ron. You're with Tom and CJ and Mark. How you doing today?
How you doing, Tom? I heard you on Steve Kane. I'm a Steve Kane listener and caller.
Oh,
Good.
excellent. Thanks. He's a great. guy.
Yeah.
Before
Well,
you
I
go on, we're going to be promoting each other's shows, and I'm glad you reminded me because they start the Southeast Florida off in the right direction at 6 to 9 in the morning. I don't know if I would like that time slot. 6 to 9.
I'm glad we got that time slot.
Yeah. And then we close out the day, and if anybody gets their brain screwed up during the middle of the day, then we clean it up. Then if they get messed up partying, Steve and Brian clean it up. So
Right.
we're bookending your brains. Hi, good to have you here. Good.
But Tom, I want to say we have the greatest military in the world,
Right.
and then that's how I see it. And that's one thing. Two, I'd like to ask you something. You know, we do. You know, I'm disappointed that Romney didn't win, but you know, life goes on. And this is what I'm saying, that you know what happened. So now we have to go for the next 4 years and see what Obama's going to do now. And with one of the things that I'm asking you is, do you think Obama's going to help Israel if they go and become peril, if they go in peril with and Iran attacks them? Do you think Obama's going to help them, or are they just going to stand by and watch it?
He is not going to help them. He's going to stand by and watch.
Oh no!
But let me explain what I mean by that. If he were a imperialistic dictator, and there was no separation of powers, he would just say, "This guy doesn't like Israel. He has been raised in a Islamic culture. He's been trained and schooled by the two leaders of the Palestinian Liberation Organization representatives in the United States, were his mentors at Columbia and Harvard and in Chicago. I mean, you know, we do 3-4 hour briefings on his mindset, his academics, his circle of friends. He is not a friend of Israel, but he cannot act independently as the president of the United States of America because there's people like us that exist. And so he has to some degree, implement the will of the people. So here's going to be the rub when this happens. When Netanyahu calls and says we need help, he's going to provide only enough help, only that help which the public in America forces him to do. He's going to try to calibrate down the escalation. He's going to go to the United Nations. He's going to do everything to keep Israel from offensively devastating their enemies so that the Arab, they know they got to teach the Arab world a lesson. He's going to try to restrict that, limit that, so the Arab world is always a trigger keeping Israel contained. That's his viewpoint. He thinks the world's safer is if Israel is contained. So we're going to have to make a lot of noise, put a lot of pressure, but...
Well, look at this way. Look at this way.
That's Mark speaking.
I'm sorry. Look at it this way. Benghazi is a perfect example. I mean, there's someone he actually liked, his ambassador over there, but he only did what was absolutely minimal necessary to protect and defend that person. Whatever he could get away with politically for his and you have to understand, Obama has a huge ego. Has a monster ego, and he wants to look good. And and if he doesn't look good, then that's what will back him into a corner. So
that's right.
CJ, you had a comment.
Well, I do, since it is Activist Friday still. And if you are concerned about Israel, Ron, here's what I think we need to be thinking about. We're not going to have a whole lot of control and influence over quick military events that are going on. But there is something that we can do as citizens and activists here in the United States to support Israel, even if our government doesn't. And something that we all need to be thinking about right now is identifying Israeli companies that we can do business with and supporting them through any kind of international embargo that is in place on Israel if Israel is defending itself against Iran or any other enemies. So when the UN turns on Israel, when the EU turns on Israel, when the United States turns on Israel by abstaining from UN Security Council votes or any other actions, we as citizens of the United States can support Israel through our state legislatures which have independent trading with the government and businesses of Israel, and also as individuals to buy Israeli products. And so we need to start thinking about how do we identify those companies, and we need to start targeting our state legislatures to have good relations with the state of Israel and basically take the power away from the federal government to turn the country against Israel.
Well, that's what I guess that's what has to happen then. That's what has to happen. Yeah. I want to ask you one question now. With Iran, how close is Iran having nuclear weapons? How close are they?
Well, there's two phases to that, and one thing Joe Biden did say was the deliverable part of the equation, and all the analysis that we see, they do have deliverable devices already, and so once they've got to that point, and the thing about it is, nobody really truly knows. The people who have the best handle on that is the Israeli government. They're the ones who have actually boots on the ground inside looking, and they're not going to give up that information. And if Netanyahu is saying spring, you got to, he's really pushing the red line. He's saying that's the 90% factor. I happen to believe it's actually going to be earlier, but anyway, I think it was
Ron, it's the wrong question, and the Arabs, sand jockeys, all this stuff. It's very important to understand that.
What?
I'm going to explain.
What did you say?
There's this view that Arabs are sand jockeys, Bedouins living, somewhere in the desert with things on their heads. Arabs and Persians in particular, they've been around for 7,000 years. Okay, they're brilliant. They're brilliant people. They're calculated people. They figured out how to rise and fall with civilizations, and they have played the biggest scam in the world. The Persians have, the Iranians, on the West by making us have the obligation and responsibility to guess when they're going to have a system that's sufficient to change the dynamics of peace in the world. It's got the paradigm has to be shifted, and the best illustration is in World War II with the two nuclear bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah, back then we understood the mindset, worldview, political and military objectives of the Japanese regime, and the kamikaze pilots that were killing themselves.
Right.
After Okinawa, where 200,000 Americans were killed.
Died.
Yeah, 200,000, right? And millions of Japanese. And then there was going to be an invasion into the mainland.
Right.
Every Japanese citizen took the kamikaze oath.
Right.
They all said, we are
right.
all kamikazes. And this is the regime in Iran right now. We are all martyrs, shaheeds, right? So
Yeah.
the dynamic, and just cutting to the chase here, the dynamic has to be that the West says, you have until December 1st to open up every single one of your places, and we're going to bring in all the UN inspectors, and we're going to bring George Clooney in and Barbara Streisand and everybody, and we're going to go inspect everything you have, and we're going to look at it, and we want full access everywhere, which they're not ever going to do. And if you don't do that, we're going to start tactically destroying parts of your infrastructure. We're going to take out your oil facilities. We're just going to escalate this thing up.
Right.
Because we know what you're going to do, and we're just not going to let you do it. And if you don't
Right.
want your country to start falling apart, then you have to be honest, and because we're not going to let you have this thing called a bomb that will change the course of mankind. That's the paradigm that has to be shifted. It ain't never going to happen with this president. It wasn't going to happen with Romney, that's for sure.
Well,
And
wait
to
a
put that-
second. Wait a second. It didn't happen with Bush. It didn't happen with Clinton. It didn't happen with George Bush Sr.
No.
Look at North Korea.
Oh yeah.
Why should
know about
Iran
North
not
Korea.
look at the example of North Korea and say,
Yeah.
"Gosh,
We can do this.
yeah,
we
we
this.
can wait this out for years
in
and
the
years
Well,
and
the only-
years,
the only difference-
and they'll send us hundreds of millions of bushels of corn too to feed our citizens while they're at it."
The only difference with North Korea is Kim Il-jong. What's his son's name now? Kim Il
Son
Nitwit,
Il-jong,
right? They don't.
Didn't the North Koreans want to supply nuclear
They did.
materials to
Syria.
Iran?
Yeah,
Syria.
they are one of the providers,
Yeah.
yes, with Pakistan and a
Yeah.
couple of others. But they do not go on on TV and say, we are going to blow up Israel when we get this bomb. I mean, they don't do that, so the
Well,
imminent
no, they
threat.
just fire off test missiles
test,
into
yes.
yeah.
But there's a more imminent threat for a lot of reasons with Iran.
Of course there
and
is,
you know,
yes.
hopefully, I mean, Netanyahu should do that. He's not going to. And we had an admiral on the other day. I'd hire him, you know, Ace Lyons, to put the military plan, because you don't have to devastate their country. You can go to certain sections and just say, that doesn't exist anymore. Oh, we're more entrenched. This doesn't exist.
Right.
After the second nuclear bomb, after the first, the Japanese still wanted to fight. It took a second
Yeah.
one. You just escalate it up, and you just keep going
Yep.
and going. And the world's going to go crazy and all that, but
course.
everybody wants them dealt with.
Right.
Yeah.
As long as
So,
they
Obama-
as long as they have the upper hand and make us play a guessing game, they're going to get it, and it's going to be too late. That's what's going to happen.
It's the same
Obama
logic.
said he was going to help. He was going to protect Israel. Then he must be. I hope he's not lying. But you think he's going to just stand around and watch it happen? So
Well, like I said, he
I
will.
just hope that don't happen.
He's going to help to the degree that there's public pressure put on him.
Right.
And I will make a public statement right now. When the breaking news, Israel attacking Iran, we're gonna move very quickly and get to Lafayette Park in Washington and organize a 1 million-man march on the White House and
Right.
make sure that this country supports, from a national security perspective, with resupply and intelligence and overflights and all the stuff they need. We will be on the ground. You got to put people in the street, or the White House is not going to listen.
That's true. It's public pressure.
Are we also the United States, the East Coast? Are we also in peril because that they've developed a nuclear weapon that goes 12,000 miles? We're involved with it too. So are we in peril too?
Well, we just
or-
did a whole show on
Well,
that.
we did, yeah.
The bomb that one of the bombs that was tested in the run up to Japan could fit inside a Volkswagen. You could take out the inside of a Volkswagen.
You could drive it in from Mexico.
You could easily drive it in an SUV. And now we have detection devices all over the place that's supposed to smell this thing through radioactive examination.
Oh, God.
But if they sealed it properly and all that, you can drive it right into New York and just push a little button and goodbye. There goes one.
Or you just come through Canada, you know.
There's a million ways. Or off the coast with the...
10% of the containers are only searched.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Well, Tom, I'll tell you, I left a message for you. I left my phone numbers and email. So if you get any more information, would you please email me?
Sure, absolutely.
I have it on.
Keep listening.
Keep listening. Cause,
Thank you, Ron.
We usually repeat.
And thank you very much for all the information. It's important to me.
Okay.
Thank you. That was Ron, listener on Steve Kane Show. And let me say it again that Steve Kane, you got to watch that show, 6 to 9 every morning.
Every morning.
Yep. We'll see you, Ron. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Ron.
Brian is on 6 to 7, and Brian is great. I mean, he does a phenomenal job, and he has an edge to him. He takes no crap from anybody. He doesn't. I mean, he takes no crap. You know,
he's good. I like you now.
I kind of let
6 o'clock in the morning, you'd have a bit of an edge to you, also. Okay, I know I would.
I let people come into the kill zone, right? I let them come in and all that stuff. Brian doesn't even let them in the door. Yeah, are you crazy? You're such an idiot. You're gay, aren't you? You got to be gay. You know. So he does a great job. Then Steve comes in, sort of the voice of moderation, and then Steve goes nuts at times.
Yeah.
So those guys are excellent. We're going to be cross-promoting each other's shows. So the Rons of the world, tune into both. And iHeartRadio, really a cool little application. I told a friend recently you couldn't get the signal. They live somewhere else and they didn't have a computer with them or whatever. iHeart worked perfectly. Download that, WNN in South Florida. You can listen to it. It is 33 minutes after the hour, after 5 o'clock on the East Coast. You're with Mark, CJ, myself, Tom Trento, TrentoVision.tv. We are looking for actual advertisers to help sponsor the show. We'll produce the spots. We'll do live spots. We will even come out to your place and
serve cookies.
We'll serve cookies. And if you want to speak to us now, we're discussing socialism, the Republican Party, and the Democrat Party. 888-565-1470. Yes, Mark, what's on your mind?
Oh, me, Mark. Yeah. So we were defining terms, socialism. And I'd like to get back to that. And because I think you're making a very salient point on this one, is that because we start arguing about what some innocuous thing, then the argument never gets solved, then the point never gets made, and then therefore we can never agree on what the correct solution is.
Okay.
It's a definition of terms is actually very important.
Okay, so for the purposes of our discussion, when we're speaking about the Democrat Party and their love of socialism, how are we defining socialism?
Well, I don't know. Anybody? 888-565-1470.
No, I mean, you're making the claims.
Yeah, right.
So what is your definition of socialism as it pertains to the goals of the Democratic Party?
It's almost easier because socialism is a very complex term to get a handle on. Mm-hmm. It's almost easier to look at the principles of the Democrat Party.
Okay.
And see where they differ with the Republican Party, and then evaluate how far they've gone, and then we call that socialism. But let me just read you. I'll just read you a simple definition of socialism.
Okay.
Socialism is an economic system characterized by social ownership, group ownership, of the means of production and the cooperative management of the economy. So what does that mean so far?
So since you started the show talking about $500 million of union money going to Barack Obama's campaign and 400,000 campaign workers coming out from the unions and 100 post-election campaign events around the country, are you talking about the union model of the means of production?
Well, that would seem to fit in pretty neatly, wouldn't it? Let me go on.
Okay.
Social ownership may refer, here's where it gets a little complicated. Let me read it as a political movement. As a political movement, socialism includes a diverse array of political philosophies, and it ranges from radical stuff to a more democratic socialism. So already we have as a political philosophy a whole range. I mean, so you're a socialist. Well, you're a revolutionary socialist, like Van Jones,
right.
who is
a revolutionary, yes.
Are you a democratic socialist where you just want...
and that would be more benign, like a Norway model of something of socialism.
The government owns the banks,
Yeah.
where you get into, the government is the owner of the banks. The central banks are owned by the government of the country. Right now, they're privately held, and it's a big difference. And part of socialism is the way a product gets to market. Think of any product, orange juice. Okay, we're in Florida. Mm-hmm. How does orange juice right now get to market in Florida?
The grower grows it. He goes out and puts it on a commodity exchange. Commodity exchange says by people who bid on the price and say, hey, listen, this is the supply and demand of the oranges here in South Florida. And
of the oranges.
Of the oranges,
of the
right.
oranges.
Okay. And then what?
And then the oranges get sold out to market, and they get squeezed, and they get put in your little box, and you drink it.
Well, let's take that a step at a time. Okay. Somebody has all those trees when you drive up the turnpike. You see all the citrus trees.
The farmer sells it to.
Somebody's got to go there. All those people they pull an orange off at a time.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Are they employed by the state or by private contractors, by private owners?
Private owners who
right now
may
in Florida,
be cooperatives.
Yeah, right now they're employed by private owners,
Yeah.
citrus companies.
But also an important aspect of this is that at every stage in production and delivery to the market, the costs associated with the product itself and with the cost of the labor are determined by the market. Under socialism, those costs, there's no such thing as real costs. The government decides what the costs and the values are of products and of labor, and that's what the huge difference is. So when you have a president who stands up and says, you know what, at a certain point you've made enough money, that right there is, that mentality is socialist.
Mm-hmm. Well, and take it one step further. Talk about when you remove the prices, and the government owns the farm, owns the trees,
citrus farm, citrus groves,
right? And they say, you know what? I'm tired of orange juice prices going up to $10 a gallon for your orange juice. We're going to set a price control on orange juice at $5. We have seized the farms, and I know this because I've seen this happen down in Venezuela. And so they take the farms, they crush them, they sell them at $5. What happens is, in a socialistic model, you have supply and you have nothing. You have and so what happens is the truck will come up, it'll line up, they'll throw the $5 orange juice out of the back of the truck, put it in the store. People will rush in and be a big run on $5 orange juice. Everybody will buy it, and all of a sudden it will be there.
Right away, you could see that we're running into a difficulty with the definition of the term.
But
because in a system of democratic socialism, that would not be the case.
But
in a system of national socialism, the government would not necessarily own the orange groves or the businesses that control the actual making of the orange juice, but those owners would be in a partnership de facto with the central government to be able to maintain themselves in their business. Bayer Aspirin didn't go out of business because Adolf Hitler was in power.
Okay.
The government of Germany did not own all the businesses of Germany during World War II.
And then you have different levels of socialism in between that. Now, we took the two extremes where you had that and you have the government owning the farms. Now, you have also a form of socialism, too, whereas the government says, well, the price of corn is, too low. Okay, so we're going to give the farmers subsidies to not grow corn. Okay? Because we're trying to make the farmers in Iowa happy.
Well, we do that now.
We do that all the time now.
That's the degree of socialism.
Yeah.
And that's what when
That's
you're
why
reading,
honey prices are so high.
and when you're reading the Ayn Rand
because
book,
they got rid of the bee subsidies.
and when you read Ayn Rand's book, that goes through those different stages and stuff like that. How it's just a slow.
Well, let's go through. Let's walk through because you guys have taken it off into some.
Okay,
more
well, we'll stop because we
complex.
asked you to define it and
Yes.
you wouldn't. So why
Well,
don't we get? Do you want to get back
the best,
to?
the best definition is an example. We got an orange grove on the turnpike in Palm Beach County or Osceola County, and somebody has to plant the tree, water the tree, do all of that. Somebody's got to own the ground. In a pure socialist economy, the government's going to own the ground.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's a pure communist economy.
No,
Well-
it's a socialist. No, it's a fine line between. There's a difference. Go ahead.
The government owns the ground, and the employees work for whom? They work for the company that the government owns. Do they get a paycheck? Like in what would we call the Cuban model right now? What would you call the Cuban model? Pure communism or more a socialist Marxist?
Venezuela is more of a socialist, where they still have rights of the people, and they do have certain property rights. It really boils down to the property rights. How much property rights are actually taken away from you is where it goes into pure communism.
The ultimate goal of communism, obviously, is no private ownership.
Right.
But in our little experiment here, we're looking at, let's just look at the paycheck. This will give us a good idea. Who provides the paycheck for the guys that are picking the oranges? Do they get a paycheck or do they get housing, education, health care, all their needs taken care of? Let's just say we have two models. They get a paycheck and then they can go spend that however they want, or they work and all their needs are met through provisions by the government.
Well, it's probably a combination of both. Because they probably live in government work camps and their children attend government schools and they receive government assistance and they get paychecks to be able to buy food with supplements of
And how's that different than the military system?
food stamps.
Sounds like the U.S. Army with food
I
stamps.
just thought I'd add that in there.
One of the ways I've heard it expressed in terms of the move of a country toward a more socialist political philosophy and economic philosophy is based upon the gross national product, the amount of money the government is spending when it reaches a certain point. I think it's like 35%. When it's spending over 35% on development, on work, on these areas, then the government's now getting its hands in areas that used to be done by the private sector. And the healthcare, the Obamacare is going to be a perfect illustration of a socialist model where we have, is there any private function in Obamacare whatsoever?
No.
No. It's all what it is. It's.
I mean, you can
basically the Medicare system distributed and paid for by I don't want to go into a whole explanation of the whole.
But you're shaking your head. What are you going to
No,
say?
I'm shaking my head because it's not basically like the Medicare system. You do not have to participate in the Medicare system. By law, you do have to participate one way or the other in Obamacare, or you are.
Yes.
Or you're.
But the functionality.
Or you can go to jail. Okay, folks?
jail.
You can go to jail. And the only way that you can exempt yourself from the system is you have to buy your way out of the system. So you still have to pay the taxes for it, and you still have to buy the insurance, but if you have enough money, you can opt out of actually using the services that you just paid for and paying and going and finding yourself a little medical boutique to check yourself into and getting yourself taken care of that way.
And I think what they're going to try to do is put on top of it, because nothing's ever really been defined about what the system actually is, but the model that is currently in play that uses for is you can either choose a Medicare system or you can get a private insurance, which the government reimburses the private healthcare insurance to run basically the Medicare plan with a little bit more advantages.
Nobody even understands this stuff. It is going to be so difficult. But let's put everything into perspective here. At 46 minutes past the hour.
Nancy Pelosi says, we'll figure it out when we get there.
Well, yeah, we're having a civics class here, struggling with the concept of socialism, because there's a criticism of this administration being socialistic. Then when you start diving into the doctrines of socialism, you see it's got an economic portion, it's got a philosophical portion, it's got a political portion. Then in each of these categories, there's a progressive socialist, democratic socialist, revolutionary socialists. So just to have a generic catch-all term is it's too easy for the person you're criticizing to dismiss, like we were doing earlier. So in terms of the Republican Party and Americans to be properly equipped to criticize this administration, we're going to have to teach everybody a little bit of civics, come up with the specific type of socialism this administration is implementing, critique it, show why it's wrong. If you just go to a definition of the economic policies of the Republican Party, it says Republicans emphasize the role of free markets and individual achievement as the primary factors behind economic prosperity.
Right.
So the Republican Party says you need free markets, which is no government ownership of the land, no government involvement in the production of it. Restrictions for sure, and you can't just burn everything all over the place and start fires. But and think of it, the closer the product is from where it's made to its end, to its retail function, the fewer hands it goes through, the more efficient it is. The little girl takes a lemon off a tree, she makes lemonade, sells it to the guy for $1. Very efficient system, okay?
Right.
The little girl gets $1, sends it to Washington, D.C., somebody processes it over there, goes to a Department of lemonade assistance. They do an analysis of the lemonade. Yes, the girl
Ask if she's got the permits and the right. The
girl's 45 years old now. Right. She gets 2 cents back, and she goes, "I'm not going to do this. I can't make any money." Mm-hmm. So, to the degree that and this is a good way of looking at socialism in terms of critiquing it, to the degree the government has its hands in the market, from origination to the retail end, it's going to slow down the system and make it inefficient. Now, why is that true? Because people are inherently greedy in a positive sense. They want to produce, but they want a reward for it. Yeah. So if they make lemonade and it costs them $1,
and it all gets taken away, then what's the point?
Or if they make lemonade, costs them $1, and they can only sell it for 50 cents, guess what? They're not going to do that anymore, so that business doesn't work anymore.
Did you see John Stossel try to open up a lemonade stand in New York City?
It's a productivity killer.
John Stossel tried to open up a lemonade stand in New York City. He had like mounds and mounds of paper.
Oh, you're kidding me.
It was hilarious.
Oh,
he just wanted to sell lemonade. And
that's a perfect example.
I think one other aspect, besides the economic that you have to include in there is none of this works without the social control. And right now the government has the social control through A, the education system, and B...
taxes.
No. B is the willing media.
Oh.
The media that does not watchdog the government. The media that does not fulfill its proper role to inform citizens. And so when you have those two components on your side, it's very, very easy to implement all the economic aspects of socialism because the citizens are too ill-informed to even recognize that this is occurring. Or, for those who do realize that it's occurring, they're brainwashed into thinking this is a good thing. And the ones who are opposed to it are silenced.
And here's the point that Tom's going for. Which party, which ideal, which system is going to more serve the the socialistic type of model versus the free enterprise type of model, and what you're going to see having more and more in the future is where he's going is to you're going to see the public sector growth rate and go up, and the employment and the people start working for the government who are not producers, and you're going to see the private sector go down and down and down, the suppliers, and the government is taking the money from the suppliers. It's very simple math. It's going the wrong way.
Somebody wrote a text and said, government-owned farms, what? Not mine. No way. Ain't happening. No, for sure. Listen to this. This is another reason why the critique, the socialistic critique that those who are conservatives are using against Democrats needs some sophistication. And I'm just reading typical, just generic definitions of the Democrat Party now, and it talks about where it was historically. But it says, in recent decades, the Democrat Party has adopted a centrist economic and socially progressive agenda, and the voter base having shifted considerably. Today, Democrats advocate more social freedoms, affirmative action, balanced budget, oh yeah, sure, and free enterprise system tempered by government intervention. They're calling it a mixed economy. So the government needs to get into the middle of that. Whereas the Republican Party is saying, no, government doesn't need to be there, the free market. The economic policy adopted by the modern Democrat Party, including the former Clinton administration, has been referred to as the third way. So they're inventing this, and they're great with language in these terms, this new third way where it's a cooperative effort. GM would be an excellent example. Cooperative effort of the government with the private sector working together to make everybody happy.
Except, do you know anybody who would buy a GM car?
A Volt.
I saw a Volt yesterday, actually. And the joke of that whole thing is we have 200 years of bankruptcy laws that are designed to assist companies like that to go through a restructured bankruptcy. But no, it was a tremendous grab by the intervention of government. This is a socialistic
and the
move,
amount of
basically.
creditors that they just wiped off the face of the book. That was completely against all types of. I still don't know how they got.
The government bought the GM stock. This is why the free market makes more sense, folks, over the socialistic intervention policies of the Obama administration. The Obama administration essentially bought stock into GM around $50. The stock's at $20, and it's something like $16 billion loss that has to come out of Barack Obama's pocket. He's got to pay $16 billion. Oh, wait, he'll just lay that off on the taxpayer. That's how this stuff works.
And all the creditors that were there were just thrown into the.
I think what we're going to see in the days to come, we're going to see a tremendous amount of this kind of work, educating, and we'll do this on this show to agree. We're national security folks primarily, but at its base, if you don't have a strong economy, your national security is going to suffer greatly.
That's
right. If you take a socialist approach to the economic policies, your military is going to suffer. We've seen that all over the world.
Before World War II.
What socialist country has a military that can compete at any level with us? Nothing at all. Anyway, it's been wonderful with you guys. Thank you for coming into our little living room. Yes, swell and neat. And we got to go now. Tom Trento, Mark, CJ. We're on TrentoVision.tv every day, 3 to 6. Please come back and see us. Not tomorrow. We won't be here. Veterans Day. All you veterans, a shout out to the veterans, and thank you for what you have done, and we'll honor you.
We officially celebrate on Monday, right?
Yeah, we'll do something on Monday for them. We'll be back Monday. Mark, our veteran in here. Woo-hoo. Good seeing you. And
they wouldn't take me.
They wouldn't take you. And I guess that's it. We're going to take off. We're going to go relax a little bit, and we'll see you on Monday. Tom Trento saying goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in to Trento Vision, where bad ideas get pulverized.